Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined once again by Landry Smith. Landry, thank you for joining me for this short talk about video games.
It's a blessing to be here, Mark.
Wonderful. Well, you listen to Quick Play, so let's get right into it. It's 2025, which means it's 5 years into 2020s. It's how math works. It's half a decade. But throughout this whole year, this whole year, we're running an ongoing series asking each of our guests, what is your game of the decade? Which, of course, it's half a decade. What are you talking about? But it's a nice checkpoint as we look in on video games of the 2020s so far. And it just works great. We can just talk about the games that we like. And so, Landry, what has been your game of the decade so far?
I was really pleased when you sent me the list, and my game of the decade was not on it. So it was It is The Last of Us Part Two.
Okay. There you go. Nice. Awesome Matt, I think, actually mentioned, I don't know if this was on or off recording, but he was like, I think it might be The Last of Us Part 2, but I also haven't played it in like 5 years. So he left it open for you.
Nice.
So what I kind of like to start out with is, what is The Last of Us Part 2 about, and kind of in your terms and how you digested it, I guess.
Oh man, that's such a big question, because it really is like a Godfather Part 1, Godfather Part 2 situation where you can't necessarily have one without the other, which does create a little bit of a barrier to entry. I suppose you could play Part 2 and you would be fine. There is a cohesive narrative that starts from beginning to end,
sure,
but you would be missing out on so much subtext and so much character development. And really, I think a lot of the gut punches that the narrative puts you through and the characters put you through in the story. But it is about really the relationships between these people in a zombie type apocalypse or outbreak. And you follow two characters that kind of mirror each other in their kind of self-righteous pursuit for justice and their refusal to stop at anything to achieve that justice, and all of the relationships and the people they're willing to put in harm's way to try to find some solace for their grief.
Gotcha. Well, for context, you know this, but I haven't played Last of Us. I haven't played Last of Us Part 2. It's too spooky. But I respect it, even though I'm also a little bit tired of The Last of Us being used as the example. But this is, I mean, what you just said is why it's used as the example of narrative. When you talk about like their self-righteous pursuit of justice, self-righteous, obviously a negative connotation, is there anything just about the characters' pursuits, or is it all bad?
I think what separates this game apart from a lot of things that you see in, especially the medium of video games, is that you could tell this story from one character's perspective and make it seem like they're doing the right thing because they have the motive, right? And they have but that's not the story they wanted to tell. And it's no, you at the end of it all, these characters are making terrible decisions after terrible decision, and you have to follow them through it. And I understand why people don't like doing that.
Sure. Doesn't sound very fun, but
it's not necessarily, but like you got to come to it from it's not like necessarily a game that I play for fun. It's more of like, do you read the Odyssey for fun? Like, yes, there is enjoyment you're going to get out of it. Yeah, it's a pretty entertaining story, but you're reading it, a lot of times for some other some other reason, and that's kind of what this game is like for me.
Yeah, or Dostoevsky. It's like,
better example. Yes,
not very fun to read, but great.
Because I think most people would probably read Dostoevsky before they read the Odyssey outside of school.
Gotcha.
And Dostoevsky is like, Crime and Punishment's the perfect example, because it's a very similar story. Like, you're going to read that and you're going to see someone, go through what it's like to just feel this ultra guilt, and it's just like it kind of makes you feel gross sometimes, but it's also just like this fantastic exploration of a character in a really dark place.
Hmm. Uh, so I also want to say, well, thank you for choosing this because it's very timely with the HBO show.
True.
I know we're trying to probably avoid spoilers for that as well. Uh,
Makes sense.
so I mean, I kind of know all the twists and turns. Actually, I did when it came out. I um, knew I was never gonna play this game, so I read like the Wikipedia plot, and it made no sense because it was like this person did this to this person, and then another person did this to this person. And like, I have no idea who any of these people
Mm.
are. That's um, but even thinking with the story or beyond the story, like what else do you like about this game?
Well, the scope and the polish and the, you know, just the execution of this massive game on this huge budget with, extremely well acted. The graphics are incredible. The gameplay's tight. Like there, it just on every level. It's so polished. It's so clean. It just works really well. I think the gameplay, the moment to moment gameplay, is really good. When you're like in a map and you're trying to take down, 7 bad guys, and the AI in these guys is like absolutely crazy. Um, they're so interesting to outwit and outsmart. And
Okay.
I've played through the game 3 times, maybe
Wow.
twice. I can't remember. I think maybe just twice. But anyway, the times that I played through it, the enemy placements were just completely different because they're reacting to what they hear from you. So
Hmm.
really cool stuff. And there's 2 different characters that play very differently.
Oh, okay. I hadn't realized they like were so different from each other.
Well, very differently might be a stretch, but
Okay.
in one, you're more prone to, a certain weapon set and maybe more stealth. And the other, you're kind of like much more ready to like take enemies out in swarms and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Um, do you think, even like thinking of the show as well, do you think fans of the show should play the game, or like what is kind of that on ramp into the game? Do you think that's a necessary step?
Oh, well, after seeing the first season of the show, I think the game is in really like, if you're a gamer, I think it's a must play. I don't think the show is even, a top 100 TV show of all time.
Sure.
I think that the video game achieves something very special. I think the show is a good show, and it shows how a video game can be adapted well. I don't know that it's going to achieve like any kind of like artistic merit beyond that. Um, so I don't know. A lot of, what makes video games special is you're controlling a character and putting them through these situations, and you're playing the game your own way. Um, you're interacting with it your own way. So,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. And plus, I mean, just the performances. It's hard. It's like getting attached to characters in a book. You have these characters carved out in a certain way. So
Hmm.
maybe I'm not the best person to talk to about the show because I am so
Sure.
attached to the games.
Gotcha. Interesting. I wonder. I haven't really had many conversations around that, so I wonder if do you get the sense of like that's a pretty. Are you unique in that, or is that kind of a sentiment across fans of the game?
I think the show was very well thought of when it came out, the
Okay.
part one, and I did feel unique in that. But talking to some of my friends who are like big TV and film buffs, their viewing on the show, they were like, "Yeah, it's a good show. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10."
Okay.
They had some of the same problems I did with it. I don't think certain aspects were very well fleshed out. I think the climax of the film or the TV show was fell very short, and the climax of the video game is like one of the most impactful moments I've ever seen in any media. So,
Sure.
um, you know, so that was really my big hang up. The TV show did some really, really cool things though. It fleshed out the world a little better
Mhm.
in certain ways. So
Gotcha. Nice. So thinking back on part two now, what do you wish was different? Is anything that's like kind of weak in this?
honestly, so the one thing that I have a problem with in almost every video game that I play is length. When
Okay.
I think about the story beats of the game and the moment to moment gameplay, I don't think that it's I don't think there's any moment necessarily where they like beefed up the game or made it too long in certain ways. I think this game could have been Last of Us Part 2 and Last of Us Part 3 though.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it's like 26 hours of a single player narrative focused game
Yeah.
is like watching, 2 or 3 seasons of a TV show in a row,
Yeah.
essentially, and that's to me, it's a little long. That being said, that's like nitpicking because this is a 10 out of 10 game, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah. And I hold to that 10 out of 10s for the 5-star games don't have to be perfect. They're excellent.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of back to the good. You may have even said this already, but what about it just makes it so special? Like, why is it your game of the decade so
Yeah, I
far?
think its willingness to deal with complex themes that you don't typically see in not only just like video games, but a lot of like television and movies. Like
Hmm.
it's not, and you saw the backlash from people who played this game. It's putting
Yeah.
the characters through things that are uncomfortable. It's these characters did things in the first part that in the real world, like if someone did something like that, they would have real repercussions, and those real repercussions come to fruition in part
Hmm.
two in a very
That's interesting.
a very interesting way, but also a
Yeah.
very realistic way. Like
Yeah.
you can't go and kill people and not expect that to have consequences, right? And
Right.
in the first game, you kind of think you get away with it, and you think these guys are the protagonists and the heroes. And the second game kind of flips that on the head, and it's like everything that you do in this world does have consequences and
Hmm.
a reaction, and it really plays with that idea. So I think its effectiveness in dealing with the themes that it tries to tackle is really, really impressive, and it's something that I would not expect a video game to be able to pull off.
Interesting. Yeah. It even thinking of like I know Naughty Dog and the developers there have like talked about this, but that in contrast to the Uncharted games where it's like nothing matters, kill thousands of guys, and you're still just Indiana Jones, like versus this having more realistic consequences.
Right. Yeah, and I mean the biggest problem with not Uncharted, which one of my favorite game series as well, is they tried to evolve that character in a world that was like kind of cartoonish and silly,
Yeah.
and when it jumped to like these more serious stages, it fell flat in my opinion.
Yeah.
Narratively and character arc wise, it does not in The Last of Us though.
Nice. So come the end of the decade in 2030, do you think this will still be your game of the decade?
I think so.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
I really do. I don't think I mean, it's possible something could unseat this, but I think this is a pretty special game to me personally.
Nice. Man,
But
that's high
we got
praise.
Switch 2 on the horizon. I mean, Breath of the Wild came out in 2017 and
Yeah.
blew my mind.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Is there another game that didn't come out in the 2020s that's like you discovered it for yourself like this decade that kind of like has shaped the decade for you?
mm, no.
Gotcha.
No. The
Yeah.
short answer is no.
Sure.
I can't remember like the last time I played like an old game that just blew my mind, or even something from like you know, the 2010s. I feel, oh, you know what? Let's back all that back up.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm Dark Souls. We'll say Dark Souls.
Wow.
Dark
Okay.
Souls is the game. I played it on Switch when it came out. I'm not
Yeah.
sure when that came out. It may have been 2019, so maybe
I don't
this
know.
is not right.
It still
But
counts in
whenever
this.
that game came out on Switch, I played it, and it was a hugely uh, like defining moment for me in video games where I previously thought this genre was really dumb and annoying, and I didn't understand why people were like, "Oh, it's just hard. Why would you want to keep beating your head against the wall?" And I think that the way people talk about those games is a complete disservice to it because, yes, it is difficult, but it's much more like old school NES gaming where you just have to like sit and think about the patterns of the enemies. And once you do that, it's really not that difficult. It's just you have to react to them. You can't go through and muscle over stuff in those games. But that's not even the reason I like it. I mean that game is just game design wise pitch perfect. The architecture of the levels is absolutely mind blowing. It's like playing like in a puzzle box that just or like a diorama that just like folds in on itself perfectly, and the way you see how the map kind of folds back in on itself constantly just completely blew my mind.
Nice.
And it led me to play Bloodborne, which I think is a 10 out of 10, and then Elden Ring, which is a very good game that I really consider to be one of the highlights of the decade, but I do think it's more of like an 8 out of 10.
Gotcha. Well, nice. Our time here is short, but before we go, do you have one hope for the rest of the decade?
My hope is that Donkey Kong becomes Nintendo's third pillar next to Zelda and Mario, and then on his shoulder sits Pikmin, a bunch of all three little Pikmin, the red, blue, and the yellow one, and they all just like kind of usher in this new era of Nintendo greatness.
Oh man, pour one out for Samus and Metroid, but it turns out she was never really the third pillar, just in our American hearts.
Yeah, I mean, Super Metroid was great. Metroid Prime was great. There's been a lot of misses in that franchise. I love those games, by the way. They're like top 25 games for me. I do think that, like, if you just think about Nintendo as a company, Pikmin and Donkey Kong make more sense to elevate with their brand, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good one. I'm excited for Bonanza. We'll see if maybe what would it take for Bonanza to usurp Last of Us Part 2 as a very different game as your game of the decade.
Well,
could it? Is that even like?
This is why, dude. This is exactly why I was talking on the last time we got together, and I was like, "Video games need a new game name." Like Donkey Kong Bonanza is a video game. The Last of Us Part 2 is not really like that at all. You know, like they're not in the same even like category of things.
Yeah,
because The Last of Us Part 2 is like a narrative experience, and Donkey Kong is probably, I mean, it's probably gonna be a better game than The Last of Us Part 2, I would imagine. For me, it's gonna be more fun to play that, but is it gonna be more impactful? More than likely not.
Well, in each way, you're kind of destroying everything, and either metaphorically or literally.
True, that's true. Well, I just really enjoy destroying worlds. That's one of my favorite things to do in games.
Into, yeah. Big fan. Well, Landry, final segment here. One name, one game. What are you playing?
Oh gosh, I kind of like haven't been playing a lot of games lately, so
sure.
The last one I told you was really it. Okay, Elden Ring. I just finished it like last week, and dude, what a game! It was incredible. Little long in the tooth, little long, and kind of made me feel like I was towards the end of it, just like wasting my life away because the game loop is so satisfying. But I'm like, am I getting anything out of this other than like, bopping monsters? And ultimately, I don't think I was, but it's still extremely fun.
Nice. For myself, I am doing some traveling soon, so I'm probably playing some Balatro on my phone.
Dude, what a game.
What a game. And also probably watching Andor while we're talking about TV shows too. I'm so excited for that.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, thank you, Landry, again for joining me. Where else are you out on the internet?
Thanks, Mark. I am. You can check me out on a podcast called Bitcast with Jake Martin, fellow
very nice
quick play guest. And we'll probably be coming out with an episode in a month or so.
Nice. Well, thank you, Landry, for being here. Thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services or on YouTube. You can press all the good buttons if you enjoyed this conversation, and find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod. Quick Play Pod, if I say it correctly, and let us know, is The Last of Us Part 2, is that the game of the decade? That's all the time we have for today. Thanks